Okay, so I'm going to do this all in one take. I promise it won't be as long as the last video was. I had several days worth of work that I had to update everybody on, but today's not like that. Basically just giving an update of the progress made in the truck. Got the engine pulled. Again, I may have mentioned this in the last video, but word to the wise, definitely, if you can, pull the trans with the motor, especially on a Ford. It almost feels like they designed it to be pulled at the same time. If I had the resources, I would drop that transmission. I would drop it out the bottom or pull it out through the front somehow, bolt it back to the engine, and then put it back in all at the same time. It would make reinstalling the starter and some of these bolts a whole lot easier. These two bolts were ridiculous. And some of the motors that I've worked on, these bolts down here will all be threaded in coming this way, right? But then the bolts that are on top, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, will be bolted and threaded that way. So it makes it easier to disconnect the engine from the transmission. But with this, because they're coming towards the engine, you have to put an insane extension on your tool to get to the bolt, to pull the bolt out. I'm sure if anybody has worked on any of the newer model Fords, you probably already know all that. Ford Rangers, F150s. I've been told that even some of the cars are the same way. Any of the cars that are rear-wheel drive, Mustangs, things like that, the bolts on the top are almost impossible to get to. And then when I pulled the motor, I didn't take the hood off. I should have taken the hood off, but I didn't want to go through the process of taking it off, having to get it realigned the right way. Yeah, I know I can put lines or marks or something, so that way I know where to put it and all that. But I've taken hoods off before, and doing it by yourself, which is what I did with most of this, is very difficult. And then you got to worry about cracking the windshield and tons of stuff. So instead, I took the grill off. And when lifting it out, it eventually gets to the point where you have to lift it up a little bit higher, and you can't unless you take the grill off. You take the grill off and it can lift up as high as it needs to go, so then the motor can then clear the frame of the engine bay and all these different, your condenser and radiator and all that stuff. And then I knew it was going to rain. So I did something. I watch a guy on YouTube called I Do Cars. Hopefully one day he will see this video. But he's always complaining about the motors that he gets in to his business, where he just basically breaks down the motors, sells the parts, and recycles the broken stuff. Anyway, does a whole lot more than that, but he's always talking about how frustrated he is that people don't cover their motors after they take them out, even if you're not planning on using it anytime soon, or it's got a cracked head or whatever. He still feels like people should cover them. Well, I did. just prevents rust from accumulating inside the motor. Let's see if I can get this thing uncovered. I had to leave several things on the motor to when I went to pull it out that I didn't want to leave on there, but we're extremely stuck on. Did not want to come off. So, like this here. This is the EGR. Basically what the EGR does is it recycles some of the gases from your exhaust back in through your intake manifold. And yeah, it started off as something that's just for the purposes of the environment and different codes and stuff like that. But with these newer model vehicles, if you delete this, which there are some delete kits to be able to delete this from your vehicle, you get your gas mileage isn't as good. It's because the computer that's in your truck, depending on what vehicle it is, they look different, but are mounted differently or whatever. But it's because that computer has been programmed and tuned to use combustible gases that are still in your exhaust to help with the performance of your motor. Yeah, crazy. So, at higher RPMs and things like that, you actually have quite a bit of gas that goes in through combustible, gases and things like that go in through from your EGR into your intake, and it helps with the combustion in the combustion chambers, so that way your computer does not have to use as much of your own fuel and air mixture. And when you delete that, it has to work overtime to compensate, which means more fuel. So just food for thought. Finally got the water pump off. That was really on there, and I had to go 3 different places to find the right thing to take it off. On this Ford, I don't know how long they did it and which ones did it. I know that you can get Fords from this year model that don't have it, but this one has an electric clutch for the fan that's powered by the pulley system. Okay, so in some vehicles you have fully electric fans. They're the ones that are mounted straight to the back of the radiator. You normally have 2 of them. Some of the earlier model, early 2000s, late 90s models, Ford Tauruses have one really big fan, but most of them are going to be 2 different fans on the back side of all of that. And they're completely electric. But on this one, you have a fan that's powered by the mechanics of the truck. So your pulley spins, and it spins the bolt that the fan is bolted to. But that fan, if you've ever dealt with any of the other clutches on fans, most of the time they'll just have an internal system that whenever it heats up to a certain temperature, it kind of clamps down on that bolt and causes the fan to move faster. And then, yes, there is a plug to it for the computer to know if there's anything wrong with that. But this one is an electric braking system, basically. There's a whole thing that clamps on around the back side of it. See if I can find it real quick to show everybody. Here we go. See that? And what that is it's a magnet. That's an electric magnet. And when the magnet receives power, it clamps down on this and causes the clutch to spin faster or slower, which, the fan is attached to. But anyway, that makes it very difficult to get the fan out because there's not as much room in between the pulley and the clutch. Normally you have like a good inch or so of clearance, so you get something that just keeps the pulley from spinning, and then you can use any large tool, large crescent wrench, pipe wrench, channel locks, whatever, to break it loose. You can't do that on this. No, there's not enough room. But I finally got it off. Try not to make this video too long. The customer that I'm doing this for, they had this replaced. And this is where they believed all of the oil was coming from. The oil leaking from the engine was coming from the valve cover. Most of these modern engines, though, have these. And I'll probably mess this up, but Pcv Valve. Pcv Valve. And basically what it does is it takes the compressed air and buildup and things that go through your valve cover, and it circulates from both sides into hoses that are also fed back into your motor through the air intake system. So there's not really a whole lot of pressure in here, guys. If you have a leak coming from this on most modern engines, it's going to be a much slower leak unless your valve cover still is just trashed. So they got it replaced and thought that it was still leaking. There's a very important lesson to be learned on this. Clean your motor when you replace things. All it takes is some brake cleaner. Clean your motor off. You've got all this excess oil on it, right? And you can't tell after you've replaced something if the oil that's on it is from the previous leak, or it's a new leak, or if you didn't even fix the leak. You can't tell because it's all dirty and nasty. So clean the engine whenever, clean some parts around it whenever you replace things, so you can see where the actual leak is coming from. Also, oil acts as a natural insulator on your motor, so your motor will get too hot. It'll overheat easier if you get too much buildup on the outside of this. And the way to tell is if you have oil buildup, because when you look at it, it just looks like it's got mud on it, right? But it'll eventually dry because your motor gets so hot, unless it's mixed with oil. But I took it apart, took it out, and these are your heads, right? They're what holds all your valves, your intake and exhaust valves. And in between the head and the block, there's a head gasket. You can see part of it on most engines sticking out in different places, right? But that's how it should look. See how dry that is? See what that looks like? The head gasket from this last valve, our last combustion chamber, all the way back is leaking. See? And all this is dirty, and I don't know if I can see this or not, but if it'll focus, it's leaking there too. And I don't know if this is leaking again or if it just didn't get cleaned, and it's from old leakage. But so you can even see all that. So this is the transmission dipstick tube. I didn't unbolt it. I couldn't get to this bolt, so I pulled it out with the motor. I'll obviously have to put some transmission fluid back into it, but I'm glad that I did it this way, because now I'm able to show. See how that's a ton. That's a ton of oil, a ton. Now the problem is, if it was just stuff coming down the dipstick tube, that could be old buildup. Yes, it will stay nasty and oily like this for a very long time, especially if it keeps getting new moisture introduced to it. So you don't know if this is from spillage, you don't know if this was from previous leaks, you don't know if it's from current leaks. You have no idea, because the engine is disgusting. Plus, guys, if you don't get the stuff off of this, I know it's a pain, but if you do it on a regular basis and just keep it clean, you won't get as much buildup. This has a lot of buildup in it, that previous mechanics could have cleaned off, which I'm going to do. Charge more if you need to, or don't, or whatever, it doesn't matter. But you see how, and there's a whole bunch of different ways to prevent this, but your average person, if they decide that they don't want to pay a whole bunch of money and they want to try and replace their own spark plugs or whatever, if the engine is dirty, you're gonna get this stuff in there. And that's a whole leaf and some other things in there that just fell off as soon as you took the thing out. And now you got to try and get that out. For me, it's not a problem, because I'm going to take the whole engine apart, so I can clean all this out. I can blow this all out. This is all something that can be easily fixed for me. But if I wasn't doing this and I was trying to replace spark plugs or boots, or even something that was going on with the fuel system, these are also where you get your fuel in. These are actually the fuel rail, the injectors they go into the intake system on this particular type of motor. And when you take that off, any of the stuff that falls into those holes goes straight into your combustion chamber. So anyway, I'll do another video later, once I get this broke down, unless it's really late, which the last few times that I've worked on this thing, it's late when I get done, and the lighting wouldn't be very good for videos like this. So if I get this done and I get everything broke down and taken apart, I'll post another video today. If not, it'll be tomorrow. Thank you.